Picture this. One golfer consistently smashes their drives 260 plus yards, but sprays them all over the place. The other hits it 200 yards, but splits every fairway. Which one's going to post the better score? We've previously taken a detailed look into how far amateurs should really hit their driver, but thanks to Arccos' latest distance report, the numbers are now also in for how much the driving accuracy of regular players is impacted by age and handicap. So let's take a look at the data to see whether this finally puts to bed the debate over whether distance or accuracy are more important for amateur golfers. Welcome back to the channel everyone, and in this video our golfing focus is on driving accuracy and its importance compared to distance, based on the 2025 edition of Arccos' driving distance report on over 6.5 million tee shots hit on par 4s and par 5s over the past year. And as we can see, golfers across all handicap levels hit fairways off the tee at surprisingly similar rates. While low single-figure handicap players recorded the highest accuracy with an average fairways hit percentage of 49.3, the difference with their least accurate 30-plus handicap friends is just 8.7%. Focusing next on driving accuracy disparity by age, we can see that players in their 20s record the lowest driving accuracy, hitting 17.5 percentage points less fairways on average than players in their 70s, who represent the most accurate age group off the tee. And these endpoint figures help demonstrate a consistent trend that is clearly evident from the numbers, namely that driving accuracy increases with age, and this is reflected in both the men and women's amateur game. But what do we notice if we next revisit the driving distance numbers by age and handicap in the context of this accuracy information? And again, thanks to Arccos' analysis of the average total driving distances of millions of their users' shots, we can not only again see the strong correlation between driving distance and handicap, but also how tee shot distances decrease over time. However, what also clearly stands out from this data is that the distance difference between the different levels of amateur golfer are dramatically larger than the accuracy variations. While as we have seen, low handicap golfers hit only a surprisingly small number of more fairways than 30-plus handicappers, there's a whopping 65.1 yard gap between these same players off the tee. I'll be honest, when I first saw this data I had to double check it, but it does seem clear that while better players do hit more fairways, the distance advantage separates them more. And when you combine the two metrics, accuracy and distance, you get the cumulative effect of both. In other words, low handicap men and women amateurs are both the longest and the most accurate off the tee, with men off scratch to 4.9 for example, averaging 250 yards or 229 metres and hitting 49.3% of fairways, in contrast to 30-plus handicappers averaging 184.9 yards or 169 metres and finding the fairway only 40.6% of the time. Now I know there are many who will forever dispute the view that distance is more important and should ever be prioritised over accuracy, but it is also worth bearing in mind the fundamental issue with prioritising hitting fairways with your drives. And that in short is because the fairways hit metric does not tell a very useful story about the quality of the drives you play. For example, a top tee shot that went 50 yards but ended in the fairway on a 420 yard par 4 would count better for this stat than a 300 yard drive, which is in the perfect position to come into the flag, but only a couple of yards off the fairway in light rough. This is of course an extreme example, but if you look at the table below, published by Lou Stagner, showing how many more strokes players will average to hole out from the rough compared to the fairway, we can see the difference is in reality small. As Stagner notes, about half the numbers are 0.1 strokes or less, and as you get farther from the hole, the difference between rough and fairway gets smaller still. Admittedly, these numbers, which are once again based on the millions of amateur shots in the Arccos database, are a baseline for courses with typical rough height and will change slightly as rough gets very short or very long. But they do help make the key point that the value of the average golfer of measuring the percentage of fairways hit to help highlight how good or bad their driving is overrated, and is therefore a stat we would recommend you should not waste your time collecting. A much better driving measurement for the average player And the first of the best golf stats we would suggest you keep track of if you really want to improve is the number of major driving mistakes you make in a round. This is because the drives that destroy a scorecard the most are not the ones that end up in the rough. And to be fair to the accuracy side of the debate, this is where the increased accuracy of better players does help. Looking at the average percentages of tee shots that resulted in a penalty shot and drives that leave the player having to play a recovery, punch out or lay-up shot, Arccos' annual distance report also highlights that when good golfers are inaccurate, they are to a materially lesser degree than their higher handicap playing partners. It is also crucial to bear in mind a point which we have made before when it comes to this topic, and it is that it shows skill to be twice as impactful as age when it comes to driving distance. Indeed, Arccos' data found that scratch handicapped 70 to 79-year-old golfers will hit the ball further than teenage and 20 to 29-year-old 25 handicappers. Looking at the accuracy data again, it clearly shows that as golfers age and lose distance, their accuracy actually improves. And if we focus in on low handicap golfers for a moment, we can see that while they lose an average 55 yards of driving distance, approximately 21%, from the ages of 20 to 29 to their 70s, during that same period, average fairway accuracy increases by 17%. All of which suggests that as driving distance declines with age, maintaining a low handicap may be associated with improvements in driving accuracy. So is distance the most important thing in golf? The answer is, of course, as we've seen, more nuanced than a simple yes or no. Distance isn't everything, but it is the foundation that makes everything else easier. While better players are more accurate, the accuracy gap is much smaller than most golfers expect, and gaining distance helps scores more than losing it hurts them. The practical reality is also, of course, that most of us have limited practice time. If you're choosing between spending hours in the range or with swing speed systems like I tried recently with the stack system to gain an extra few yards, or perfecting your short game, the choice isn't always clear-cut. The beauty of understanding this data is that it can help you make smarter decisions about course management, equipment choices, and practice priorities. As we have seen with this data from Arccos though, and from others including the pioneer of the strokes gained metric, Professor Mark Brodie, distance and hitting the ball as far as you can should be your priority off the tee, and consistently sacrificing distance for accuracy is a poor trade. So the next time you find yourself hitting a fairway wood off the tee for accuracy, just make sure you're absolutely certain it is going to be worth it. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Your support makes a huge difference to the channel. Check out our next video on how far you should be hitting your irons by comparison to driver. And as ever, and most importantly, we hope you're enjoying your golf.